Hello and welcome to our career webinar, Exploring Analytic Marketing with expert tips to become a successful analytical marketer today. Our guest today is Jai Pankaj, who is Director of Marketing Technology and Analytics for Procter Gamble India. More about him in a moment. Here's just a couple of tips on using the WebEx controls. Please enter your questions for Jai in the Q&A panel so that we can address those in the Q&A portion of the webinar toward the end. And remember to ask all panelists. You can put chat information in for all panelists in the chat box. We will take a look at that from time to time, but the questions are better put into the Q&A box. And I will now introduce Jai Pankaj, who is the Director of Marketing Technology and Analytics for Procter Gamble India. And he is focused on unleashing the power of data and technology to meaningfully engage with consumers. As you know, Procter Gamble is one of the largest consumer products manufacturers in the world, with a history of over well over 100 years. So before we talk to Jai, he's asked us to run a quick poll question. And Jai, you can unmute yourself if you'd like. Good morning from California, in India.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's my pleasure to be with all of you, and thank you for taking the time to invest in personal development.
I've opened the poll, and I'd like our viewers on YouTube Live and LinkedIn Live can also engage in the poll by leaving a comment. Question number one, how much work experience do you have? Question number two, where in the world are you based? And most interesting for Jai is he'd like to know what you believe marketing is, what its purpose is. So please answer all three questions and hit submit. The poll will stay open for about another 20 seconds. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here are the results. So, yeah, most people have more than 5 years of experience. I think we're heavily an Asian, probably Indian audience. But I'd like you to comment on that third poll question, and then I'm going to throw the presenter function over to you, Jai.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome once again to everybody. It's my pleasure to be with you. And as I said, you must congratulate and pat yourself on the back for investing in your own personal development by attending this session. I'd like to answer to number 3, and you are right on. You think holistically, and the role of marketing is not just to make ads or put out the right communication, but it is really for us to grow the business. So let's dive right in, and I'll share my screen. And if you have any questions or comments along the way, please feel free to use the chat feature. Excellent. Hopefully you can see my screen, Stuart.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so today's, before I start today's topic, I wanted to start with a quote, and I don't know if you can see it very well on the screen, but essentially John Wanamaker said back in early 1900s that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And while it speaks to a much narrower definition of what marketing is supposed to do, I think it hits the nail on the head in trying to identify where the problem really lies. John was founded a few companies and which became the predecessor to what we know today as the Macy's department store. So in terms of the agenda, I'll go deeper into my introduction. So Stuart, thank you for setting the stage and doing the brief introduction. I want to go a little bit deeper into my own analytics experience and career. We got to know you already through the poll, so great to know that most of you are based in Asia. Most of you have experience more than 5 years, so I'll try and tailor my content accordingly. We'll then touch on what we feel or think is marketing analytics. And there is what is, I feel, a much sharper definition, but there's also a very holistic definition, and we'll look at those. What can you expect when you enter into the field of marketing analytics if you're not already there? Then, as I had promised in my teaser, I want to share a couple of frameworks with you, and I feel from my experience that these frameworks are super powerful. And not only in marketing analytics, but if you're anywhere in that area of analytics, this should serve you very, very well. And lastly, what are the skills for a successful career in marketing analytics? So, starting with my own introduction, today this is about my 18th year in my career. And most of my life I've spent in the area of analytics. So I've done a business analyst role at a technology firm. I've run large analytics factories where we were working with strategic partners. I've run a global marketing analytics service inside Procter Gamble as well. And lately also looking at data science in the area of media analytics. So suffice to say that I've spent enough time in the field of analytics to be able to pass on some of that experience back to this crew. So let's go to what is marketing analytics. Now, as you know, on the marketing side, often it is described as the 4 Ps, and the 4 Ps are starting with product. So definitely as an analytics person in the area of marketing, one of your jobs could be to identify what is the right product that we need to bring in our portfolio that might be missing today. As you know, consumer tastes and trends evolve over a period of time, and it is very important that we keep our ears firmly to the ground to understand what products will sell, are selling, by analyzing the data that is coming out. The data could be something as simple as understanding what is really selling in the market, because as any reasonable sized company, you will have hundreds of SKUs. And to be able to understand which SKU, what size, what form, what variant is selling in a particular corner of the geography is going to help you understand what are the tastes that the consumers and shoppers have. So product is one aspect of the analytics, and that's why I want to take a more holistic view of marketing analytics than just focus on advertising or communication, which is often what is cited when we talk about marketing analytics. The other area of product that we need to think about from a data source point of view is really all the consumer complaints, for example, that your support teams might be getting. That is a very rich source of data to tap into to understand what is the source of dissatisfaction that your consumers have, so that you can loop that back in and improve the products as the feedback might suggest. The other source and vital source today in the from all the online shopping that is happening is the customer or consumer reviews and ratings. If you're able to mine that data, there is a ton of insight there to understand what is right or wrong about your product or about your service that you can go address. So I wanted to begin with using the construct of the 4 Ps framework, how you can focus on the first P and what are the data sources that are really relevant for product. The second one is, of course, price. And it's no secret that price is a big factor for the overall commercial success of any corporation or enterprise. And as a variable, you can look at it and look at the sensitivities that the sales has to price and understand what is the ideal pricing that you want to maintain for your products or brands. Place, which speaks to what channels are you selling it through, what retailers, what formats that you're selling it in, and do you need to maintain different SKUs for different channels and so on. And lastly, what is more commonly understood to be promotion or communication. This is where we want to look at advertising, both online and offline, and understanding on the online side, particularly the entire consumer funnel. So starting with how many people clicked on your ads, to how many people landed on your website, to how many browsed or touched a particular product, how many added to cart, and how many then checked out. And then also on the offline side, similarly, the world of advertising is full of opportunities for us to understand um, each the ROI of every marketing dollar that you spend. And there are various models that are available for you to play around in this area. There is the traditional MMM or market mix modeling. There is nothing but a multivariate regression that you try to identify through aggregated variables the impact of different components of your support model and what's the impact that it is having on the overall business. In the field of offline, so that's MMM is very prominent. Now, of course, in online, we have what we commonly refer to as MTA or multi-touch attribution. And there again, there are multiple models available, last click, first click, and so on. So again, we don't necessarily have the time today to go deeper into each of these, but online, offline, and the impact of advertising on final output is a very important area for all of us to think about. And the other one on online that is becoming quite popular these days is using the data to truly understand how can we personalize, who is likely to see what kind of ads, what should you communicate in those ads. Now, those are all driven by analytics, and that's why I do feel that marketing is changing fundamentally in how people get communicated and reached out to. So that hopefully gives you some idea about what we mean when we say marketing analytics. It is more comprehensive than just focusing on advertising. And in the field of advertising as well, you can look at online, offline, and then together both of them. Now, I promised to give you a couple of frameworks, so let's go right into it. And this is not necessarily very specific to marketing analytics, but much broader, and you can think about applying it to wherever you are. So the framework one that I call is collect the reds. Now, whenever you look at your business, you can look at it along various dimensions. You can look at it by your customers, by your consumers, by your retailers, by your distributors. You can look at the total business sliced up by what geography or state or city the business is happening. You can slice up your business by looking at what products, SKUs, sizes, forms, variants they belong to. And you can use any combination of these. So you can say in city A, my SKU1, uh, how is that doing? And as you break your total business down into these smaller parts, some businesses, some parts of the business will be doing well, and other parts of the business may not be doing that well. And that's where, if you look at it at an aggregate level, you may feel that, on the whole, the business is reasonable. It's overall, it's meeting all the KPIs, and you mark it as a green, and you move on, and you look at something else. But if you took the moment to look at the individual slices that you have sliced up, and you identify the reds, then you have a much deeper opportunity to go and make the interventions, even though on the outside it may look like everything is hunky-dory. There are parts that still need attention, and when they are attended to, mended, and carefully nurtured and brought back to green, the overall business is even stronger. So often, I have made this mistake in the past as well, where once you look at the business on the outside at an aggregate level, without slicing and dicing it up as much as you could, it gives you potentially the wrong indicators. So it's very important again to look at all your dimensions of product, of customer, of geography, of consumer, what have you, and then slice them up into as many combinations. So there could be thousands of combinations, but and each of those combinations you look at it individually under the glass, under the microscope, and try and understand whether there are any reds there. And if there are reds, can you collect all of them, quantify what the size of price is if you turn these reds into greens, and take that back as the insight from your data. And as you present it, you need to be very clear as to where the largest impact is going to be, because often there is a full queue of intervention opportunities that is available to any decision maker. And that's why if we were able to quantify that this particular intervention, when fixed or addressed, can lead to X amount of business, and you sort the intervention opportunities by the impact that they can generate, and that really helps. That really helps in pushing your point across. The second one is really to jump to insights, and this is where I take this picture that it may be a 1,000-page book, and you are flipping through the book one page at a time, not knowing where really the insight is. And our job, really, as people in analytics, is to make sure that people don't have to die by browsing and flipping through pages one after another, but they are really able to get to the right page instantly and get to the insights directly. So um, how can you prevent this tendency sometimes where we create these tools and dashboards that require people to go click, change their filters, change their drop downs multiple times, browse through like a 20-page dashboard to eventually get to the one or two key insights that they might walk away with. And when the design is such, it probably is not very conducive to driving the right action, the right result amongst other people. And as you try to jump to insights, what I have found very useful is to think in terms of calibration. So you often need to have a benchmark to be able to say this part of my business is doing well or not doing well. And you can often do that along two lines in my mind. One is if you can look at your own relative performance versus time gone by and see whether that performance is doing better than previously. And the second one is to look at the comparison across peers. So how is your competition doing, or how are other brands in a similar category doing that may come from your own portfolio. So you can calibrate along the time dimension, or you can calibrate against your peers, and you will get to very interesting insights on what parts of the business really need improvement. I will pause here before I go into the next section to see if there are any questions that you have at this time, Ms. Wood.
I think one of the questions that has come up is when you refer to the reds, can you elaborate a little bit more on um, what those are in terms of, where you're seeing the red indicators and how you collect those?
Absolutely. So you can take any metric, for example. So let's take the metric of sales, and if you define success to be that I need to be selling 30% higher than last year because the market is really going very well, then red in that circumstance would be anything that is growing less than 30%. And as you cut up your business into 1,000 different pockets and look at each pocket individually under a magnifying glass, you go and measure each of those pockets by that parameter, whether the business is not growing 30%. And if it is not growing 30%, you mark it as a red. And then you collect all those businesses together, because it could be very well the case that some businesses are growing at 70%, others are growing at 80%, while some businesses are not growing at all. And on the aggregate, if you left it like that, it could be that the on the aggregate, the business is growing 45%, and then you call it like green and you move on. But the intent is to find out all those red pockets, even if there are 5 out of 1,000, even if there are 20 out of 1,000, you collect them up, because if you intervene and make them greener right now, your business is going to be even stronger, even though from the outside this doesn't seem to be too many issues.
Thank
Okay, and let's then turn our attention to the successful career, and this is a topic that is very close to my heart, as to what does it take for someone to have a very successful career as an analytical marketer. As with all things in analytics, I think starts with an understanding of the business that you're trying to grow. Very important that you spend the time in the field, shadow the people who are actually going to use these tools and these insights, participate in those meetings. That's very, very important that we start with having a very acute understanding of the business itself. Um, Somewhere, some research pointed out that the best analyst is 7 times better than the analyst at the bottom. So there is a wide variance between the best and the others, and that's where imagine if you are working with one of the analysts who's still coming into the system and learning and improving. Uh, the best analyst is as good as 7 of them. So that's the wide gulf that we are talking about, and it also is good news in a way that if you continuously hone your skills and improve your skills, you are likely to distinguish yourself, because the best analysts are very, very few in number. The other one that I wanted to talk about was, it's not, I don't necessarily see an analytical career to be lined up against a function. And when I say function, I mean marketing, finance, sales, and so on. So you may be an analytical marketer one day and you may specialize there, but you would have enough rights to come and look at other parts of the business, and focus on the supply chain side of it once, or focus on the commercial side or sales side of it or distribution side of it. And that would be equally within your grasp, because what is most important is first to understand the business. And then, of course, you build some depth in understanding a function, but the business comes first and the function comes second, and not the other way around. Um, so that's what I wanted to make sure that we fully understand. The second one is on data, and as people in this area, we all know that even the best and most experienced data scientists spend about 70% of their time straightening the data out, and data is a real problem. It's like a wardrobe that is very jumbled up, and you can't find what you really need to wear that particular day. So today the problem is not that we have a lack of data. In fact, the problem is that there is a excess of data, and we don't know which one to look at and how to make sense of it. And that's why understanding that data, going with some data engineering skills as well, because sometimes as people in the analytics field, we may be super focused on querying the data, structuring our hypothesis, having the analytical mindset, visualizing the data, and bringing the insights back to the teams that we serve. But we can really distinguish ourselves if we also focus on some of the upstream needs that can really solidify our work further. Because if 70% of the work is really in scraping the data out, why won't we build more skills and deepen our understanding of that space? Because that can really make the biggest difference in the results that you can drive. Next is, of course, the tools. So while it is good to have understanding of the tools that your company or your business is using, it is sometimes equally important to step back and look at what are the alternatives that are also available, because then you can make the right choices, suggest the right options for the organization as well. And lastly, as I said, being very proficient in technology is very, very important in my mind. If you're not very good in creating a data model or writing the SQL queries and so on, I know sometimes the work is separated and that responsibility belongs to a separate team, but you will really do well to, particularly if you're still starting out, you will do well to deepen your skills as far as database skills are concerned, as far as some of the data engineering skills are concerned. Just so you know, there was a poll by the CMO magazine, if I'm not mistaken, and all the chief marketing officers were polled, and they were asked, what percentage of people do you have the right set of people in your organization as far as analytics is concerned? And the answer was, can you guess? Only 2% of the CMOs believe that they have the right. Yeah, and that's really the state of affairs. It's really quite telling that the confidence level is so low, that in low single digits, that most people think that they lack the right team to take it forward and to take their analytic journey forward. So that's about all I have. So I would turn now to any questions or that might be there on the chat. Still?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the question sheet. And Roy asks, how much does analytics have to do with statistical know-how?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's got a lot to do with the statistical know-how, especially the basics. As you get started and as you advance in your career, you need to get more proficient with it. So at a basic level, grade 8 maths is just good enough, to be honest, at a very basic level, and that itself can drive a lot of value. But as you go more advanced and looking for correlation, looking for modeling, um, then it becomes very important that you have a very sound statistical basis. You should be able to understand what a mean is, at least read up if you don't remember what you learned in school, and be able to fully grasp it. So, as a person in this field, you should be very comfortable with mathematics. You should be very comfortable with statistical concepts, because otherwise, the models that you build, they will not be standing on very firm foundations, and that's very important. I see one here by Jambe Doji, and is asking, what is the future of digital marketing? I think the world is going towards digital marketing, and with the proliferation of low-cost data, with the access to low-cost smartphones, more and more people are going to be on digital mediums. And more and more people are going to watching their content that otherwise they would have consumed on television, they would be watching on digital. And that is why more and more companies are going to spend more and more of their advertising dollars on digital. And it becomes very important that we as companies know how to judge the effectiveness of those digital marketing spending and dollars. So in my mind, I think the digital marketing is going to be twice as important or thrice as important in 3 years' time than it is now. Such is the speed at which uh, companies are embracing digital marketing, such is the speed at which the ecosystem is evolving towards digital marketing.
A question from one of our users who asks if you require a degree to become as an entry qualification into the field, or can you acquire qualifications in another way?
Yeah, I don't think you need a degree, to be honest, of any kind to be a marketing analyst. You could very well do courses that are available now on Simplilearn and other platforms where you can demonstrate, first pick up the skill and then apply it. One of the best examples I saw recently was a graduating student had put out some kind of visual about how the ratings of the Simpsons program in the US had evolved over its 10 or more seasons, and each season had more a number of episodes to suggest that while the first 2 seasons were a hit, the later seasons were mixed. And I don't know whether that was accurate or not, but the output that the person had generated and posted was marvelous to see and quite professional in its appeal. And if you can demonstrate that you've picked up some skills and you've applied those skills either through work that you put out there in your blogs or on LinkedIn, or even in online forums like Kaggle, you will have the right credentials for people to want to work with you and use your skills to impact their business. So I definitely don't think you need to have a degree or a background already, but you can certainly pick up the skills. But it's very important that whatever skills that you do choose to pick up, you go deep into it because, as you saw on the other slide, the best analysts are 7x more productive than the worst analyst. So you don't want to be anywhere at the bottom because it's very quick for organizations to realize where in the pack you are, and you need to be careful about that.
Okay. Vivian from our LinkedIn live stream asks, how important are coding skills like Python in a marketing analytics career?
They're becoming increasingly important. Now, you could live without it for a period of time, but sooner than later, you have to start acquiring it because if you don't start acquiring it, you will become very limited in your ability to create an impact. So, 4 years back, 5 years back, we wouldn't look for a Python experience, but now it's almost becoming base table stakes. So either R or Python, you've got to come in with knowledge of those, and it is to your own benefit because once you're proficient with those, you will be able to do things much faster and create more.
Arvindam asks, as an analyst working in the digital marketing space, how can he upskill in terms of business knowledge?
Can you say that again, Stuart? Sorry.
Yeah, the question is, as an analyst working in digital marketing, how can one upskill in terms of the business knowledge?
Yeah, it's by being in the trenches. So as far as the business knowledge is concerned, you can you can go with your market research colleagues, start visiting consumers' homes if that is the way your organization works. Sit in and listen in to what the consumer is really saying about their experience. So that's one way to really deepen your knowledge. Be in the field, talk to the retailers, talk to the people who are actually making doing the selling. There's no substitute for actually spending time on the field. The second one is really participate in all the discussions where the strategy is being conceived, where the reviews are happening on a periodic basis. Even though you may feel like as an analyst, that's not where you are actually adding direct value, it's very important for you to have a broader perspective on what the organization strategy is and use that to inform your hypothesis and analysis. The third one is it is very important for you to actually use the product yourself. So it goes without saying, and I hope that many of you, wherever you are, you're already consuming the products that your organization is selling. It's very important to experience firsthand as much as possible. The fourth one I would say is to have a good pal in the business yourself, who you can ask on the questions that you would otherwise hesitate to ask in a much larger and open forum. Go ask these questions, be curious, and get your answers so that you can truly internalize all the facets and aspects of your business. So that's how I would say you can deepen your business knowledge.
Here's another question from the LinkedIn stream. It's kind of a technical question. What are the dimensions that we need to consider when we set the ideal price for a product?
When you set the ideal price of the product, there are many things that come into play. One is the attractiveness of your product relative to what is available already in the market. It depends on how you're positioning the product. The same product can cost 2x if the packaging is different, if the communication is different, and if you give a more premium feel to it. So it depends a lot on your strategy that you're playing as a portfolio. You may already have a product already existing for decades at a certain price point, and you want to play your portfolio by bringing another product at a higher price point or a lower price point, and so on. So it depends on a number of variables, but most important is the intrinsic worth and the value that your product is adding to the life of the consumer or the shopper. And then other aspects around it in terms of what is your own portfolio strategy. So that's number two. Number three is how much is the consumer really willing to pay? And that you kind of establish through your initial concept tests, or you establish through consumer research. And then also you do a landscape assessment to say, what is the market operating at? And understand how the market is divided across many different price points, and where do you have a right to win or right.
All of that, by the way, sounds like the, the role of the analytic marketer is central in each of those steps.
Absolutely. There is a ton of data to inform those decisions, to understand where the white space is, to understand where you have a right to win. Of course, you go hand in hand with your colleagues from market research and marketing.
One of our YouTube live users asks what types of tools like Google Analytics or other tools do you use to obtain customer insights?
Certainly, there are many different tools that are available today to get those insights. Google Analytics is a key one there, where you're able to understand for every consumer or what's the path to purchase or the consumer funnel. There are other tools that are available, and I'm not going to name them. But there are tools, for example, that do sentiment analysis and Google sentiment analysis, and you will get a list of many popular tools that are available there that listen in on the consumer reviews and understand what is the consumer saying and if there are any opportunities with your product and how to handle it.
Ion asks another technical question, which is, how do you ensure that indirect data sources are relevant, and how do you validate them?
How do you make sure indirect data sources are relevant?
Yeah.
I'm not sure on what you mean by indirect data sources. I can only guess what these indirect data sources could be. So maybe you're referring to the data sources like the consumer support data, which often people don't think about, maybe considered to be indirect. I think some of these indirect data sources tend to be very illuminating because they've never been looked at in the past for many, many years. And if you can cast your net wider and bring in a fresh data source, you can get so much more information out of it and you can really wow your audience. I remember a case where back in the very early days, some were not in my company, but outside, uh, looked at some sample reviews online, and they were able to match it with what was happening to the product on a time scale, and they were able to correlate the two even qualitatively, and that was such an eye-opening insight for the organization. So definitely, if that's what you're referring to as indirect, it's got a lot of potential, and you should always think laterally to see what data sources we can bring in.
And it sounds like one of the ways that you validate those sources is to look at whether the insights you draw have any predictive value or correspond to the other insights you've drawn from other data sources. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Saurabh asks, with the advancement of machine learning and AI and blockchain and other technology tools of that nature, is that going to make the job of the analyst and the analytic marketer easier, or is it going to make it more complex?
That's an interesting one, and I think it's going to make it more impactful. So it's definitely these tools allow you to distinguish yourself from what other people in the organization can do. So with enough time, anyone can take data in, put it on Excel, and plow through it and get some basic insights out of it. However, when applied well and with the right analytical hypothesis to begin with, there are chances that these models will help you differentiate yourself. At the same time, allow you to answer questions that were hitherto not possible to answer, and take that to impact the business in a much greater way than you've done before. So while it may be more complex in the sense that you've got to learn a new technology, you've got to learn a new technique, and you've got to master it, but there is a lot of reward for going through that. And and you don't necessarily always have to go towards machine learning or become a data scientist yourself. You can very well be a great analyst, and there is a role for that as well, and there is a place and value that you can significantly add by being an analyst without venturing into the more advanced, deeper waters, so to say.
Um, Naveen asks a question about ethics and privacy. Basically, the question is, do analytical marketers have a role in ensuring data privacy or related aspects, data security and that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think data privacy, data security is the cornerstone of everything that everyone must do. It is like walking on the street and following traffic signs. You should not think that another way is possible at all. So, understanding basics of data privacy and data security is very, very important as you take your job on. So, for example, is it okay for you to communicate to this consumer? Have you got the right consent to be able to re-engage with that consumer? Basic things like that is going to be very important as you try to engage with consumers and market to them. Similarly, on the cybersecurity side, and I hope that there are more specialist functions in your organization that ensure cybersecurity standards are fully met. But from an analytical standpoint, it is very important that if the boundaries are defined, then you stay within those boundaries and not venture further.
Um, Donna asks, what are your thoughts on getting online digital marketing certificate? Are those valuable?
Yeah, I think it is fairly valuable as an analyst because it ties back to the question that one of you had about gaining enough business understanding. And in fact, 2 years, 3 years back, when I first came into a marketing technologist role, and by the way, my role is a bit broader than just analytics, I and the organization requires us to do a OMCA or Online Marketing Certified Analyst course. And I remember at the time I went to Simplilearn and did a fairly arduous and difficult, in the sense that it took many hours to complete it. So I must have spent about 60, 70 hours completing that course, and then after that taking the OMCA exam. And I do feel that that set the grounding on understanding the online marketplace and business much, much better. And I was finally able to understand that in some cases you pay only for click, in some cases you pay for impressions, and what's the difference between the two. So there were many of these basics that were very, very clear once I went for that digital marketing course. So I would recommend, if you have the chance and the opportunity, to ground yourself into the basics of digital marketing or online marketing. That's always going to be helpful.
We have someone who asks whether a person with no technical background uh, can enter this field.
I don't know the specifics of the no technical background, but I definitely think everyone can enter this field as long as you have the inclination and aptitude to do so, even or regardless of whether you've done it in the past. So if you think you're mathematically inclined, if you think you're analytically built, and if you have the inclination to learn, then there is no stopping anybody, and the sky's the limit. And if you have the right drive and the willingness and the inclination, you should be able to acquire the skills in due course and distinguish yourself.
That's
But you have to
encouraging.
ask yourself, if you have to ask yourself whether you want to do it.
Um, we have a question. Saurav asks whether domain knowledge is very important in developing business understanding.
I would not It helps. It helps, but I don't think it is a prerequisite because you should be able to back yourself to say that once you want to get closer to developing your business understanding, deepening it, then you will spend enough time to acquire that, right? So I don't know what you mean necessarily by domain. It could be one of two things. It could be, do I understand FMCG very well? I'm giving you the context of Procter Gamble. So is that as a domain or a sector? Do I understand that? Or from a domain, it could be, do I understand marketing very well? In either case, it helps to have the same background, but I don't think it is a prerequisite. And I do think that the analytical skills are transferable easily between different sectors, between different industries, because the concepts and the analytical bent of mind remains the same. It's very important that you have a curiosity. It's very important that you understand the tools and how to apply those tools.
We have a question from a YouTube user who says, I'm working as a MIS executive, which I presume is management information systems, and looking to go into either digital marketing or data analytics. Which branch would you recommend this person start with?
Which branch of, I assume,
Whether they should approach it from studying digital marketing first and then analytics, or analytics first and then the digital marketing. Is
yeah,
there a better
that's
is
an
there a better
interesting one.
order?
Yeah, I don't
Is
know
there a
if there
better?
is a yeah, I don't know if there is a better order, to be honest. I think we need to do both eventually, and it may be a matter of a few months here and there. But if you're an MIS person, I think you can definitely start by acquiring the analytical skills and the tools and the techniques there, because that's going to be your calling card and that's going to be your differentiating factor versus other people on the team. So at least if you know that very well, then you can expect that another team member in the wider team will bring the marketing know-how initially to aid the hypothesis setting, to aid the uh, framing the business question and the problem. So you can do that in tandem with another person on the team. But if you don't have the analytical skills or the know-how to begin with, then it is even more difficult. So I would probably lean towards making the analytical learning first, or the tool and technique learning first, and then followed by the learning of the digital marketing area.
Mm-hmm. And I think the last question we have is from a college student who is considering whether digital marketing or marketing analytics are the better career path. So, what strengths should she have when considering the two, and which one? What are the deciding factors, strengths, and inclinations?
Yeah. If you don't like coding, that I would lean towards making maybe going towards digital marketing instead of going to marketing analytics, because I do feel that the world of marketing analytics is going in a direction where coding is going to become a necessity. And if we don't like coding, then eventually you will hit a ceiling, and that's not going to be something you like. So I would lean towards digital marketing. In an absolute, if that was not a constraint, if coding was not a constraint, if you did like coding, then there is a fabulous career path to be had in either of those. It all depends on your drive and the approach and the intent you bring to these areas at work, uh, and uh, and uh, and that alone determines your success. But each of them have fabulous opportunities as well.
All right. This has been a great session, and I do want to Thank you, Jai, for being with us today. I've put up your LinkedIn information so that people can reach out to you through that channel. Are there other things like other social media that you participate in?
No, this is great. Yes, please just message me or add me on LinkedIn, and very happy to connect there and take the journey forward. Hopefully, you will or you are users of Simplilearn and will go on to look at what Simplilearn has to offer as well. And I've benefited a lot myself from some of their courses, and hope you will enjoy it as well.
Thank you. I want to mention one of the initiatives we have here at Simplilearn, which is our Skill Up program, which provides free access to over 300 skills trainings and 1,000 hours of video content across a number of different categories, including digital marketing and analytics and data science. And you can see there, and I've dropped in the chat also a link. Our next webinar in our series of career and expert webinars is on January 27th, about 2 weeks from now, on how tech and learning will redefine the future of work. Ashutosh Gupta, who is the India country manager for LinkedIn. And we hope that you all be able to join us for that. We'll be sending out a link to that webinar registration to people who've been on this session today. And we do want to thank you all for being here. You can connect with Simplilearn on our social media channels as well, on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we are looking forward to having you at future events. And please do check out our Skill Up. And again, last thank you to Jai Pankaj for being here today and sharing his insights with us. And thank you, everybody. That concludes our webinar for today.
Thanks, everyone.